All right. So we have been doing a deep dive into the 10 Commandments. And the 10 Commandments are the laws that God gave Moses to bring to the Hebrew people because they were actions they could take to bring more harmony and peace into their lives at a time on this planet when life was really hard. And so today we're going into the 8th commandment, which is thou shalt not steal. Now, I don't know what you think of, like when somebody talks about stealing, but I think about the big things, like bank robberies or car theft, international art thieves, that kind of thing. But it can also be, like, technically stealing would be if a big brother felt like he had to steal some bread for his little brother who was hungry because the family didn't have money. Technically, that is stealing. Or snagging a french fry off a friend's plate when they're not looking, right? And we think to ourselves, well, they wouldn't mind. They'd want me to have that fry, okay? Or taking a pen off someone's desk even, something that simple. It's like, well, it's not their personal pen. The company buys all their pens. It's not like they're going to suffer. They got 50 pens on their desk, right? And we condone things like, well, what about when a government steals secrets from another government for the good of protecting the country? Right? There's a lot of gray areas out there, right? When we want something to go our way, we can turn things into a gray area. It's like, well, really, it's for the good of whatever. Okay, so going deeper and deeper into thou shalt not steal, we get thou shalt not seek something for nothing. The name of our title talk today, our lesson, seeking something for nothing. That's basically what stealing is. Stealing is the endeavor to get something for nothing, or to get advantage over something, or to get control over something. Now, here in New Thought, Unity, under the law of divine compensation, which is as I receive, I must give back, or eventually it's going to catch up with me, okay? So as we give is how we receive. Equal opposites are happening, right? For every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. This is the law of divine compensation, and there is no such thing as getting something for nothing. Eventually, we're going to be paid. Now, we do live in a world where sometimes we may think, when we're just observing, that this is happening all the time. We might see a person, or like, okay, a big thing is that how riches are distributed, right? We look at the distribution of riches, and we know kind, compassionate people who struggle with money, or they struggle with their lives. And we know people who we might perceive don't seem very nice, or fair, or honest, yet they have like more than enough. They have everything they could possibly need, and that doesn't seem fair. But we don't really know the activity going on in everyone's consciousness. So inside somebody who is kind and compassion could be a belief system of not enough, or the belief system of I can't manage this, nothing ever works out for me. So you can be kind and compassion and still be in lack consciousness, right? So this kindness and compassion is only just a couple of little parts of this package that's us. So this is where we might see that a kind, loving person who seems to struggle, and then the people who we perceive to be not so nice, it could be that in their consciousness, they think, everything always works out for me. I always know the next thing to do. I trust that voice I hear, like my intuition. I trust my gut feelings, and I act on it. So even though they may seem to not be very nice, they have a strong consciousness of creating in their lives, and so they do. So how we actually get to wanting something for nothing from there is that to seek something for nothing is a shortcut. It is a bypass when we lack faith in ourselves. That's what it ends up being, as a bypass. Because it's in our consciousness, it's in our way of thinking, it's in the words that we speak. We're thinking lack, and then we're speaking lack. And so somebody who's feeling this in their heart, they might be thinking something like, well, I need the shortcut because I cannot do it on my own. I don't have what it takes. My life, everything's just been so unfair. I don't have the tools necessary to move forward. Well, I never got to get an education. Basically what this is equating to is something out there needs to fix my life because I don't trust what's working in here. So this is seeking something for nothing. My husband and I, we know somebody, and my husband said, yeah, they're the poorest rich person I know. Poorest, and this person is an Inland Empire millionaire. Now, when you look at the outside of this person's life, it seems like they have everything. A new car every couple of years, big piece of property, a really cool house, like houses in other states and stuff, and lots of travel. But if you get inside their inner circle, you see that it comes down to a lack of faith, where they're actually struggling, that they don't believe in how things can work out for them. So their thoughts, in their consciousness, they believe that to have a business that makes money, and they do, I mean, they make millions of dollars. Well, I don't know now, this person could be long gone by now, but back when we knew this person, they were making millions of dollars, but their basic idea was, well, to make money, you have to kind of skimp on the quality. You give the bare minimum of what's required. Or, this is the other one, you don't pay your employees enough. Okay, so they had all these employees. Now there were employees who did really good work, but they weren't compensated for it. So they left. They went and found jobs where they were compensated. The employees who stayed, they did not do good work because they thought, why should I do good work? I'm not getting paid what I'm worth, so I'm just going to skimp on what I do. Well, they got resentful. I cannot tell you how many times I heard from this person they had to fire someone who was stealing from them. Like, it was a lot. Because the employees started feeling entitled. Well, they don't pay me enough, so I'm just going to skim a little off the top here. Okay, so there's one of the consequences then of this person being and seeking something for nothing consciousness was they kept losing employees. Okay, now another consequence is that they never seemed to be in the right place at the right time. That they were literally out of sync with life, out of sync with the activity of life. They would miss out on so many interesting opportunities by minutes or by dollars, like a small amount of dollars, or go buy a new car, and then like a week later there's all these giant rebates, or they'd sell their old car and like get totally screwed over for it, right? There was just always all this other stuff. So there's a consequence somewhere in there. We are out of integrity when we are seeking something for nothing, so we cannot be in sync with the activity of life. So seeking something for nothing, of course, we know it's not just about stealing money. Wanting something for nothing can also look like entitlement issues. And I think using the word entitlement, we're throwing that around a lot these days. Like, well, they're so entitled. Everybody just, look at that person, so entitled, right? And entitlement basically is believing that somebody believing they deserve special treatment without considering the consequences to others, okay, for their choice. Like someone who drinks and drives. They're not considering that they may not drive to the best, and then somebody could get in an accident and it would be their fault. Also, entitlement can look like, well, if the universe wanted me to do that, then they'll just do all the work. Now, this is the one I hear a lot in the spiritual community. Like, I haven't heard it recently, like since I've been here for sure, but like in the work I used to do, well, I'm going to open a big healing arts center, and if the universe wants me to do that, it'll find a place, and the rent will be so inexpensive, and it'll just bring me tons of clients, and I'll just win some money. I'm going to play the lottery because I'm going to win some money, because if the universe wants me to do all this, it better make me win the money. Okay, so that's a big entitlement issue right there. We also, seeking something for nothing, one of the little side effects of that is taking things in our life for granted. Now, Rhonda Byrne, who wrote The Secret and had the movie and it just became so famous, really, I think her best book is called The Magic, and it's about gratitude. It's just all about gratitude. She says, if you are not showing appreciation for everything in your life, you're taking it for granted. And I was thinking about that this morning. What did I just take for granted? Getting filtered water out of my fridge. Somewhere else on this planet, somebody is praying for what I'm taking for granted. Okay, so that can be like a little entitlement hint, so we can pay attention to that. Now, really, though, what entitlement comes down to, taking things for granted, that's a sign that we are lacking faith, a complete lack of faith. Jesus talked about giving back. This was important to him, this law, or this idea of giving and receiving. At one point, and this is in the book of Matthew, he starts giving instructions to his disciples, because now he's sending them out into the world, right? Go out and spread the good, spread some good. So he's telling them things like, well, go travel over here, and don't worry about packing a bunch of stuff. And travel over there, don't fret about your food. People are going to take you in and feed you. You'll be taken care of. You just have to trust that. Then he gets real specific. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, cast out the demons. Freely you have received, freely give. He's telling them they've already received so much. They have already received so much. It's time to expand the good out beyond themselves, to go out into their communities and spread the good stuff out there. He expected them to honor the law of divine compensation. Freely you have received all this, now freely give. Ultimately, seeking something for nothing comes down to the lacking of faith. A lack of faith, we may think because we're spiritual we have faith. Like we may think because we sat down and said a prayer that we have faith. But a sign of lacking faith is feeling like we don't have any inner resourcefulness. Like we don't have inner resourcefulness. We don't know, well, how would I make something happen? Someone who's seeking something for nothing feels like they're not capable of making things happen for themselves. They don't trust the spirit within. They don't trust that inner voice, the intuition. Now, if they're not trusting that, that's the thing within us that triggers inspiration and good ideas and the enthusiasm and is guiding us on the next thing to do. Well, if we're not trusting that, that means we're not having faith in the message or the messenger. And then we're not acting on it. We have to have faith in ourselves first. Faith that we can act on what we are guided to do. Faith that we have what it takes. If somebody feels guided to just sell their house and move to their own island, at first that can seem exciting, but then they're like, well, I don't even know how I do that. I know, I would be like, forget it. That's not really a dream. Actually, it's not. I love being here. But we know that when we get the inspiration to do something new, we're going to have to do some stuff that goes along with it. And so trusting ourselves that we can do what it takes to make that happen in our lives, that's a really big thing for us. And a good thing to remember, of course, is that if we receive the inspiration in the first place, where do we think that inspiration came from? Right? It means that we were inspired for a reason. We can do it. We will be given the inner resourcefulness we do to move forward on that. There's that within us that knows what to do and how to do it, and it compels us to act on what it knows. That compelling part, that's the intuition, that's the inspiration, right? That's the enthusiasm to do the next thing, the good idea. That's what all that is. So we receive an idea and we act on it. Now somebody can say, oh, well, I have all this faith in God. I trust in God. But then they get inspired. It's like, well, I don't know how I would do that. They don't trust and act on it. And they want heaven to do all the work. They want God to do all the work. This is seeking something for nothing. And it's not going to work for us because the universe is responsive. There's this constant back and forth happening between us and the universe. We receive inspiration. That's a big deal. So we act on the inspiration and it triggers. It's like playing handball, like in a court where you smack a ball against the wall. You smack that ball to the wall's going to smack that ball back at you. You don't just smack it and think it's going to never appear again, right? So this is what's happening with the universe. Someone seeking something for nothing lacks faith. That's all. That's all. We all know people who probably are in that frame of mind sometimes, so we could hold a little grace for them and then hope that people are holding grace for us when we go there too. In the book of James, James gave some really good instruction on how faith and wisdom and action all work together to create manifestation of good in our lives. he put it in 2 different chapters, and I just discovered it on accident. Like, I was like, oh, I'm so glad I read these things 2 in a row. So here we have from James chapter 1, verse 5 and 8. He says, if you lack wisdom, and think on this, wisdom is what we need to do the next thing that we're going to do. Right? It's an inspiration, it's an idea, it's some kind of understanding. So he says, if you lack wisdom, ask God, who gives to all men liberally and with grace, and it will be given. If you ask for wisdom, you will get it. You will get it. He says, let him ask in faith, not doubting, for he who doubts is like the wave of the sea driven by the wind and tossed. Because for somebody, if somebody asks and then they doubt, that's considered being double-minded. That's being double-minded. He says, a double-minded man is unstable in all ways. This is what it looks like to be double-minded. Oh, I really want to do this thing. Yes. Oh, but I don't know how I do it. Forget it. Okay, that's what being double-minded looks like. I was inspired to try to write this, and but then I sat down, and I'm just not a very good writer. I got writer's block. I've got to wait for inspiration. It needs to be raining outside, because then I'll feel like writing. Maybe I should start drinking like that Hemingway guy did. So I can't write until I have something to drink. That's double-minded. So God gives wisdom liberally and with grace. All you have to do is ask and believe you're going to receive it. Have faith. So liberally and with grace, more than we could ever need. That's liberally. And we don't have to earn that wisdom. We don't have to be this wonderful, loving person all of our entire lives. We can, from this moment here, we can just say, wow, I'm just tired of everything I've been doing. God, give me some wisdom. Right there. And then the only thing we have to be willing to do is embody this law of giving and receiving, the law of good. That's all we have to be willing to do. Step into, listen to the answer that we get, listen to the wisdom, and act on it. That's all. We just have to be willing to act on the direction that we are given. So this is all about the generosity of God. Okay, getting wisdom. We ask for wisdom, we receive divine direction, we receive inspiration, we get the enthusiasm to move forward, we get some kind of understanding that helps us do what we are going to do next. That's what it is. And then in James, you go to James 2, you've all heard this, faith without action is dead. Or you might have heard it if faith without works is dead. Because just faith alone is not actually faith. Faith is also acting on whatever you were guided to do. He said, you see how a man who works by his works becomes righteous, not by faith only. He's saying a man had faith and he took action. And this is righteousness. Righteousness is when we're bringing good into this world. Righteousness is when we're having faith and calling God through us, for us, as us. So we shall not seek something for nothing. Now we can justify this, it's really hard. I don't know what to do. I cannot even tell you how many times I've said that. That's pretty hard. Okay, I don't know what to do here. It must be that I'm not meant to do it. How about nothing ever works out for me? I was born under an unlucky star. My parents grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. No faith leads to no wisdom, which leads to no action, which leads to no growth, which leads to no expansion. So we're not ever moving out of our comfort zone. Inside of our comfort zone, this is where we're on autopilot. We've created all we're going to create. It's a done deal. It's been done. Nothing remarkable happens here. We don't get the aha moments, the epiphanies. There's nothing exciting. There's no signs, no wonders, no synchronicities while we're just sitting in our comfort zone. This is what happens when we're seeking something for nothing. We're stuck. That's all it is. Seeking something for nothing, we're stuck, and we're looking for something out there to fix our life. That's all it is. Any of us can get unstuck. We can do it. Everybody has been so stuck at some point in life. So I'm going to share a really simple process for getting unstuck. This is so simple. We start, first of all, with the faith practice within ourselves, by reminding ourselves of who we are and where we come from. God is all things, and that means me. God is all things, and that means all the stuff I'm worried about. God is all things, and that means the solutions that haven't presented themselves yet. Okay, we remind ourselves of this. We can do the actions of the first 4 commandments. Right? Place no other gods, little g, before God. Right? We're seeing God as the ultimate authority and not focusing on the problems. And then think no thoughts of lack. Right? We think about abundance. Speak no words of lack. So we're speaking only words of abundance. And then we do our part, let God do its part. We do our part, let God do its part. Because the universe is responsive. So we let go and let God do its work. Now I think that's really easy. It's a conversation you have in your head all day long now. That's what that is. And I promise you, if you practice it, like I got to that point where it's kind of automatically it will pop into my head when something, like I feel flummoxed about something. God is all things, and that means that thing too. You can do it. Like if I can do it, anybody can do it. Okay, then we can think about, so we have this conversation in our head all the time. God is all things, and that means this little thing I want to create in my life. So whatever that is right there, right here and right now, today, go home and do something that will help that grow, whatever that is you want to create. So here's the next thing we do. We do our very best. That's one of the 4 agreements, right? But we do our very best. We do our very best with what we have right here and right now. Okay, we make constructive use of what's here right now. You know, back in the early 2000s, I knew I wanted to be doing this. I didn't know how it would look, but I just started telling people that I would speak on spiritual stuff or energy healing, holistic healing, that kind of stuff. I started getting, I got to be a fill-in like minister on Sundays for other ministers who went on vacation. I had a New Age store in Riverside call me up one time, and they were like, yeah, we heard you talk on angels, and we're having an event here, and it's going to be on like earth medicine, and we have a Native American coming in, and we would love for you to talk about fairies. And I'm like, you mean like Irish fairies? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, I don't know anything about that. And she says, but you know what, Deanna? If anybody could do it, you could. And I was like, that sounds fun. Okay. Like, it was out of my comfort zone. Right? But I decided to do it anyway. And I just researched Irish folklore, like authentic, old-fashioned Irish folklore. And I got to do that, and it was a lot of fun. Now, I will say I spent a lot of time also, though, doing this. Well, you know, I need to have one more workshop. I need to take one more training. I need to take one or read one more book. I need to get one more essential oil. I need to try one more flower essence. There's like always one more thing. I always had an excuse for not putting myself out there. Okay, so we do our best with what we have in our life right here and right now. Everything in our life can be put to constructive use. Okay, so we can start doing something right here. My husband built a hot rod out of a garage that was not a full-size garage. Like, talk about constructive use, right? Okay, so we do our best using what we have in our life, but we also do our best in our entire life, in all parts of our life. Okay, our relationships, our body, honoring our house, honoring things like our car. You know, I heard here in Unity, like 20 years ago, there was a teaching of Catherine Ponder, and she talked about this woman who wanted to buy a new car, but she couldn't seem to get the financing, or she couldn't find the car that was a good price, or she didn't have a way to earn the extra money. So she started treating her current car really well, and it was a beater, but she cleaned it up really nice. She had somebody give it a good polish, and she started playing her favorite music. Like, she'd play all this happy music, listen to happy radio stations, because I think back in those days there was probably no 8-track players yet, even, because that was Catherine Ponder, right? But this woman just like took beautiful care of her car, and then when she would arrive at a destination anywhere, she'd say, "Thank you, car, for getting me here today." And then home again, "Thank you, car, for getting me home today." And then she, found a way to make some extra money. She got her car. But really, that story is about, we take really good care of what we've got here to show the universe. Like, this is how great I am at taking care of stuff. And what happens is when we are doing this, we're doing the best with what we've got, and we're living our lives the best that we can. We outgrow our own lives. Our own life will say, "Well, this container's not big enough for you." we're going to expand it now. Our own life up-levels us into that next, right out of the comfort zone and into the next thing. That's what happens. Okay, then there's one more part to this, right? So we're doing our best with what we've got. We do our best in all the package of our life, everything. We also want the best for other people. This is a big part, wanting the best for others. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Every man takes care that his neighbor shall not cheat him. But a day comes when he begins to care that he does not cheat his neighbor. Then all goes well. He has changed his market cart into a chariot of the sun." A chariot of the sun. So we live our life doing the very best we can. We live our life like every little corner just as beautifully as possible. Then we take an interest in others. When we take an interest in other people, we want the best for other people. We now become a rising tide. And the rising tide lifts all the boats, not just our own little boat. So just through these three things, right? Doing our best with what we've got in all our life, wanting the best for others, all of a sudden, the good is just coming through you so fast you can't even keep track of it all. And your life is saying, oh, bigger container, bigger container. That's how we know we're really getting the lesson, thou shalt not seek something for nothing. So our call to action this week. You know, I remember, bless you, I remember hearing, when I was a kid, hearing about farming practices. And the farmers would just grow crops and grow crops and grow crops. And then all of a sudden the soil, not all of a sudden, but years, the soil had nothing left to give. The soil gave and gave and gave, and then it became barren because it was farmed wrong. I know they have different practices now, I think. But the soil nobody ever gave back to the soil. That can happen in our own lives. Like we can actually turn our life into this barren landscape, right? Because we take and we take and we take without giving back. So here's our affirmation as we go into this week. I'm doing my best, and that is always enough. We'll say it together. I am doing my best, and that is always enough. So over this next week, this is really a pretty simple thing to do. How can we do our very best? How can we do our very best with what we've got available? How can we do our very best in all of our lives? Like, who's going to go home and clean their car out and thank it for getting them home? I am. I did on the way down here this morning because it was fresh in my head. But man, it's like, how often do we think about that? Like, oh, I'm going to just appreciate all day long. And we do for a couple hours, and it's like, we're done. Happens to me. That's what happens to me all the time. Okay, so we're just going to do our very best with what we've got. And we're going to take an interest in others. And how does that look? I really want to be clear on this because I've had a couple of people like say, I don't have that kind of time. It can sound like when you take an interest in others, I don't mean like go up to somebody and say, tell me your life story, and then that's what you're doing the rest of your life, is just listening to other people. That's not what I mean. Actually, I learned a very powerful lesson about taking an interest in others from a barista that used to be at the Starbucks down on Oakland Road and Ukaiba Boulevard. And my kids were little. We would go in there like once or twice a week, early, like 9:30, on our way to Park Day. And this barista, who was always working, I'd hear her saying this to people. Oh, you were just so sweet. It's so good to see you. I just gave you an extra shot of vanilla today. And, oh, when I saw your coffee order, when I saw this cup, I knew it was you. And I was looking around. Are you guys headed off to Park Day? And we would be there for like a minute, like listening to her. Like she talked to us for less than a minute. But we would walk out that door, my kids and I, just steeped in the generosity of her spirit. That's taking an interest. And I think Starbucks has that down, right? And I think there are companies who teach that. You take an interest in the customer for 1 minute. That's all it takes, right? But that generosity of spirit will stay with us. As we do these things, we're growing right out of our comfort zone. Because when we do things to perfection, we get better and better. So we keep doing bigger and bigger, right? We like a squirrel, a flying squirrel. It used to just be a squirrel that could jump from here to there, but somewhere it became a squirrel that jumped farther and farther, and like pretty soon they're evolving. And like, what would have happened if little squirrels were just like, no, we're just going to stay in the same tree? No, they kept jumping farther, and they evolved, and that happens to, we can do it a lot quicker than the evolution of a squirrel, right? When we do things in our own life to perfection. As good as we can. I won't say perfection, but just as good as we can. These are the things that move us out of the comfort zone, and these are the things that help us to create heaven on earth. So until next time, remember, you are divinely designed to do all of this that we ever talk about down here. You are the activity of God, walking around in a body, and in everything you do, you are blessed, and so it is.